Happy Vesak Day. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So my Dhamma brothers and sisters, this morning I would like to give a talk on Hiri and Ottapa. These are just Pali words, but you can translate them as moral. Hiri can be translated as moral shame, and then Ottapa can be translated as moral dread. So it has to be qualified with the word moral, because there's other kind of, like maybe shame, shyness. The Buddha say that's not necessary, but this is really necessary. Moral shame is very necessary, and moral dread is necessary, as opposed to what you call fear, which is bhaya. Bhaya in Pali means fear, but this is called ottapa, which means moral dread or moral fear of the consequences of misconduct. Without delay, I'll just go straight to the discourse. We find it in Anguttara Nikaya, numerical discourses of the Buddha. I'll read directly. Buddha talks about bright, because there are two bright qualities. What are two? Moral shame and moral dread. These are the two bright qualities. These are two bright qualities. Of course, we find the Buddha mentioning them in different places. In Digha Nikaya, he talks about, we have a youngest devotee here. Yes. So he did even Satipatthana Sutta. Last time we were doing Sutta studies, he participated. So we talk about, in this Digha Nikaya, the Buddha talks about the seven powers, spiritual powers. We're always familiar with other powers like faith, energy, then mindfulness, concentration, wisdom. But in this book, he adds two more powers, and one of them is Hiri and Ottapa. Also, he talks about Arya treasures, spiritual wealth. He talks about faith, sila, ethical conduct. Then he talks about Hiri, Ottapa, learning, which is sutta, which is S-U-T-A, and then renunciation, chaga, and then he talks about wisdom. Those are spiritual wealth or spiritual treasures. So you can see when the Buddha repeats these qualities in different places, then it means they are very, very important. They are very important. He talks about, in another discourse that follows here, I'm going to read directly from the word of the Buddha. He talks about behaviors. Because these are two bright qualities, protect the world. He talks about these two bright qualities, protect the world. What are the two? Moral shame, moral dread. If these two bright qualities did not protect the world, there would be not be seen here or any restraint regarding one's mother, aunts, or wives, of one's teachers, and other respected people. The world will become promiscuous, like goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, dogs and jackals. But because these two qualities protect the world, there is seen here restraining regarding one's mother, aunts, or wives of one's teachers and other respected people. So you can see these are the two qualities that actually they are guarding the world. Which world are we talking of? Singapore? Uganda? Actually, they're guarding one's world. In other words, as an individual, you are protected by these qualities, these two qualities, the 5 aggregates of clinging as what we call a being, a human being, you are protected. But also the world of all beings. All beings, all living beings are protected by these two qualities. You think that the world is protected by missiles? Is that what you think? You have Minister of Defense here. Is it what is protecting the world? What do you think? All Katyushas, these guided missiles and all these things, are these what are protecting the world? No, these are the qualities of the mind that are protecting the world. There is a very good quote I like from Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King, they said that scientific development has superseded spiritual development. So now what we have is guided missiles and misguided men. Now, misguided, we have the opposite. Instead of moral shame, we have shamelessness. Instead of moral fear, we have fearlessness. We do whatever we want, to the extent of even disseminating what we call decimating the world. Already we see this in history. Have we seen this in history? Nagasaki and in Hiroshima. We see it in Pearl Harbor. I've been recently there in Hawaii, Pearl Harbor. We see these nuclear weapons really actually about threatening the world in a modern way, a modern world. So what went wrong? It's human mind. And we can actually rectify the situation if we have moral shame and moral dread. I want to read from a book called Abhidhamma Sangaha, which distinguishes these qualities of the mind so that you don't confuse them. They talk about characteristics of moral shame as disgust at bodily and verbal misconduct, as opposed to ottapa, which is fear of wrongdoing, or moral dread, which is actually fear of or dreading the consequences of such misconduct. The function and manifestation are similar. Not doing evil is a function, and the manifestation is shrinking away from evil. But when it comes to proximate cause, Buddha goes and, of course, the path to purification, and also this book on Abhidhamma talks about the proximity cause as with Hiri is respect for oneself, and now with Ottapa, which means respect. The proximity cause is respecting for others. So now, I would like to give some stories from my experience, how I faced these mental states, starting with the Hiri. With the Hiri, I experienced it like this. The story will tell you the distinction between the two mental states. I started teaching pretty much in 2006. I started teaching, assisting teaching, and there's a meditation center in the United States is called Spirit Rock Meditation Center. Is in California. It's one of the biggest meditation centers in the United States. So I had to leave our center, Bhavana Society Monastery, in West Virginia. So they dropped me at the airport. But for some reasons, we got lost. We got lost, and only very close to really my departure time. And as a monk who was going to co-teach this retreat, I'm the one who have to give the precepts, right? And I'm flying from Dallas Airport, which is on the East Coast, and I'm going to West Coast, San Francisco. I reached the airport, and very little time left for departure. And of course, the people who dropped me at the airport, they went back to the monastery, Bhavana Society, which is almost 2 hours from the airport. So now I reached the airport. Of course, we are talking about 2006, September 11, had just happened a few years ago. And there was a lot of security check. Now, I proceeded on to the security guys. When I entered this security place, they looked at my robes and they looked at me as an African. They could not put the two together. They could not put the two together, and then they told me that I need a male assist because this was a female, and usually the male always assists male, whatever that assistance is. But anyway, they kept on saying male assist, male assist. There was no male assist, somebody who can assist to check me anyway. So now I looked at the time. I have a time not on my risk. I got my time and looked at it. It's a meditation time. I got it. I looked, the time was going 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The call male assistant is not coming. Now, what started building? Anxiety, stress. Because I know I'm going to miss this flight. And I know the car has gone back to the monastery. Then the female say, okay, please, go there. Wait for male assistant. They're checking others. Meantime, the other people are being checked. They're going. For me, I'm there, and I look at the time again. My flight is about to leave. Now, as a person, a monk, who is going to teach about how to overcome anger and aversion? Here, anger is getting very close. Coming, I could see coming in my mind. But what helped me is this mental state. I start to think, I'm a monk who ordained to overcome suffering. The good thing, actually, these robes remind us so much, you know. They remind us so much because it's a color of renunciation. This color is the color of renunciation. We renounce the world, but so more, even more, renouncing mind states, like unwholesome mind states. We try to renounce them. And here I am, I'm faced with a situation which is provoking, very provocative for me to really get angry. Please come here. You don't know that I'm a monk. You're not going to get any weapon. And actually, I would see words running into my mind, but I can't see them, you know. I can't see them. So what was guiding me not to say those words? It's actually Hiri, respect. Respect as a teacher, as a monk, that if I lose it and I get angry, what will happen to the people I'm going to teach you on the West Coast? Finally, male assistant came. And when he came, I had almost about to lose my patience because came just in the nick of time when actually I was saying, please come, my flight is leaving. So that's the reality. I was going to say the reality. So he came and said, please, can you do like this, your hand? I said, yes. Can I pet you a little bit? I said, no problem. So he started doing like this. But because I wanted to overcome so much of the tension and relaxation, every time I was doing like this, I said, wow, thank you for the massage. So he laughed. He laughed. Now, when I laughed also and he laughed, the stress was going, you know. And then he kept on more like where there is a... Wow, thank you very much. This acupuncture is very good. Because actually I learned acupuncture using your hands. like this. I learned this acupuncture. So thank you very much for the acupuncture. Then he said, no. You see, there's a place where you have to put your feet here, another one. So he said, do this, do like this, put your foot here, put your foot here. So I remember in primary school, I used to do gymnastics. I said, thank you very much for reminding me of gymnastics. So then he did like this. And then he told me, sit down. Sit down. I said, can I pet your socks? Because it was very cold, I was putting on socks. So he started patting down my feet like this. I said, thank you very much for the reflexology. And both of us, we laughed. And by the time I left, I made his day. He said, thank you very much. And you have a wonderful time. And I said, okay, thank you very much for all this wonderful treatment, free of charge. I had got my massage, I got my acupuncture, not the one I'm getting here actually. Acupressure. And I've got my reflexology. Actually, I found out this Hiri helped me not to really get disappointed. And that's very clear that Hiri was there so that I can actually have self-respect so that I can not violate the precept. The precept, I cannot violate what you call telling something out of anger that's unwholesome. So that was very good. And I use it every time I go to the airport. Every time I go to the airport, I'm using it. So, and people, the security officers are so happy when I tell them like this, thank you very much for what you're doing. I think I'm the only passenger who thank them. Because other passengers are so much uptight, they just zip through the airport, I think. So now, that's my experience about Hiri. You can bring a lot of experience yourself, as a father, as a mother, how you can really see this state of mind helping you to navigate around your daily life with people you live with. Out of respect, self-respect as a father, there are certain things you should not do. Out of self-respect as a mother, there are certain things you shouldn't do. As self-respect as a father and mother, son, and as a friend. So human being with this we have these qualities that we can count on really to protect ourselves and others. For the other quality of the mind, which is called Ottapa, this one was before I became a monk. I was working in Thailand for 2 years. Remember, before I became a monk. Otherwise, you get confused. So I was a scuba diving instructor, teaching scuba diving on a beautiful island called Kopipi Island. Part of my job as an instructor was also to work in a shop as a manager, making sure that I book the diving trips and all these things. So one good morning, there is one guy from Sweden came to me and said, Stephen. Sorry, before I became a monk. Sorry about that. It has to be before I became a monk. Stephen. My name was Stephen. Stephen, yes. Can you help me in one thing? I said, what? I started this business where you're working. I started this business with a Thai owner. And I pumped in a lot of money. I got a lot of equipment from Sweden. But this man is not giving me my money. So that time, the owner from Thailand was in Bangkok. So he told me that, I'm going to take all my equipment, half of it, and half of it stay behind. At that time, I knew Buddhism, but I wasn't a monk. I said, what? You are taking half of the equipment, and the owner is not there. What do you think when that owner comes and asks his equipment? I'm the one who's going to be blamed that I'm the one who stole the equipment. You see how this guy was implicating me? He's from Sweden, and he was actually putting me in danger. So now what helped me not to act on his request, what was it? Was Ottapa. Because I knew the consequence. What are going to be the consequences of actually doing wrong? So that one was very clear. It was about myself dreading the consequences of actually stealing. That would be stealing. Because the guy went to Bangkok, and I'm supposed to want to keep all the equipment. So you can see your experience also. I don't have to ask you, each of you. We don't have a lot of time. Look at your experience where you saved the situation because of Ottapa. This is very, very important. Now, what follows, since you know about the distinction between the two mental states, the question is, why bother? There are many good qualities of mindfulness, like good qualities of the mind, like mindfulness, wisdom, concentration, faith. Why do we bother to cultivate these qualities of the mind? Why? Mindfulness is enough, maybe. But don't you think that to really bring these qualities, you have to be mindful? You have to be mindful. And also you have to cultivate wisdom in order to know the distinction, and also when to apply them, and also to make sure that you don't forget them, don't forget the application. It requires reflection, constantly reflecting. Is this going to lead to my harm? Is it going to lead to the harm of others? Is it going to lead to suffering of myself, suffering of others, and suffering of both? I think this is very, very important. This is very, very important. This helps us to know or to understand the distinction between what is skillful and unskillful, between what's bad and what's good. Don't you think these are guidelines to know that? During our study here, Sutta studies, our focus was also about ethical conduct, sila, which is a very good foundation for spiritual development. And without these two mental states, you cannot uphold the sila. The Buddha talks about them as the guardians of the world, lokapala. These are two states of mind, are the guardians of the world. So without these two mental states, it's very difficult to maintain 5 precepts at the minimum. You cannot. You take them out of the window, you take them out of your life, you're going to break each precept because you don't have moral shame and moral fear. This is very, very important. It's very important to distinguish between what's skillful and unskillful. Already we talked about how to distinguish between these two mental states, wholesome and unwholesome. How do I know what's wholesome and unwholesome? Should you always go to the monk and ask, please tell me what's wholesome and unwholesome? Are we going always to go to people to try to make this distinction for us? Or are we going to have these two mental states which help us to distinguish what's wholesome or not? We need to cultivate them. We need to cultivate them. A little bit of review on what's wholesome and unwholesome. Those people who have been here, probably you remember this. Do you? What's the distinction between wholesome and unwholesome? And who said it's skillful or unskillful? Is it the Buddha? Is it the monk? Who said that this is skillful and this is unskillful? Who said? When I give a talk, I want people to tell me. This is not, I like very interactive talks because that keeps you awake. If I say, okay, this is a list of awesome, other people will just be sleeping. But if I ask the question, then people start to think about it. Okay, what's the distinction between wholesome and unwholesome unskillful, and skillful. Those who are not. This question for people who have never attended my talk. I want to see. If you have never attended my talk, please raise your hand. Otherwise, what I'm going to do, this talk is 45 minutes. People are going to cruise and are going to sleep. But I want to see what's the distinction between skillful and unskillful. You've listened to the talk from Sister Sylvia Bay. What was the topic? What difference between bad and good? Yeah, good and bad. Already you have listened to these wonderful talks. So raise your hand if you know the distinction. Yes, you. Oh, you're scratching your head. Scratching your head. Yes, you. You're scratching your nose. Who can tell the distinction between what's skillful and unskillful? Because if we don't know the distinction, how are we going to have Hiri and Ottapa? Because with Hiri and Ottapa, we have to know that this is out of self-respect. And so, no, this is unskillful. I'm not going to do it. And out of also what we call Ottapa, out of the fear for the consequences, dread for the consequences of this misconduct, then you know that this is going to come to you. These are the results that are going to come to you. But if you don't know the distinction between what's wholesome and unwholesome, how are you going to cultivate these two mental states? Because you don't know. You can just keep on going, doing the opposite. Instead of preserving life, you kill life. I give you an example. One time I was again in Uganda. I taught one of my nephew about the 5 precepts. He was only 11. And then we are negotiating our land in Uganda, where we have a temple. We wanted to buy it, and then we had to call the chief from the village. The chief was 50 years, somewhere around that. And my nephew was only 11 years. So, not so long ago, I had taught 5 precepts to him. And then he was around our group negotiating the land. All of a sudden, a rat, we have so many rats because we have a forest there. So it passed between us, and then it started going down. The chief started running after a rat to kill it. My nephew said, stop, Buddhists don't kill. 11 years. And the chief was over 50 years. You can see already the young man knew about what is unskillful. But this chief didn't know what's skillful and unskillful. That's why he was running after the rat to kill it. And the rat was saved. The rat was saved because of my nephew. My nephew knew the distinction between what's skillful and unskillful. That's why I endeavor to ask you, how can we distinguish between what is skillful and skillful? I think without wasting your time, I should flash this out. Because some of us who attended our discourses, you know it already. We can distinguish from what's skillful and unskillful looking at the motivation. What's your motivation? Is it greed, hatred, and delusion? If that's the motivation, your volition, the motivation, what could that be? Skillful or unskillful? Bad or good? Unskillful. Okay, now you know the distinction. What about if something is skillful? We look at the motivation as the opposite. Generosity, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, and what? And courage. So this is the way how to distinguish. We look at the motivation. We look at the action, maybe it may not tell us. But when we look at the motivation, we can decide for ourselves definitely. This is out of greed, hatred, and illusion, and we know that it's unskillful. It's bad, universally. It's universal badness. And if it's skillful, wholesome, that means universal goodness. Now, what other distinction did we see? What's the result? Is what you're doing is going to lead to one's happiness, the happiness of others, the happiness of both. If something is leading to happiness of oneself, others, and both, that's what? That's skillful. That's universal goodness. That's universal goodness. We look at the results of our action. What about if it's leading to suffering of oneself, others, and both? Unskillful. So we look at the results. Is what we are doing leads to remorse? Is it leading to regret? Does it lead that way? Or is it leading to joy, happiness? Also, we have to look at what are our desired goals. Yesterday, what did we say? What's the goal of all Buddhists? Attain what? Nibbana. You have heard about the story of Nibbana, I think, now. What's our final what? Our final goal is to attain Nibbana. And if what we are doing is aligned with that final goal, then we know that it's skillful. But if he's turning away from that goal, what's that? Unskillful. So that's also a distinction. That's why I advise people to have the final, resolution, make a strong resolve, to have a final Nibbana as their aspiration. Not just stress reduction. Practicing wholesome states to reduce stress only. Of course, that's a bonus. When you practice, you reduce your stress, is a bonus. But ultimate goal should be to attain final liberation, Nibbana. So whatever is lined, whatever you do that is actually towards that goal, inclined towards the goal of final liberation, is wholesome. And if it's just doing quite the opposite, then it's unskillful. In fact, the Buddha said there are two ways. One that leads to samsara, and one leads to Nibbana. Opposite direction. So we can say the one that leads to samsara, leads to suffering, that's definitely unskillful. And then the one leads to Nibbana, that's very skillful, wholesome. And when we know that, then it's easier to know, to arouse that state of mind. Because this is something that comes before you do something. Hiri, Ottapa, is a reflection you do, is this leading to Nibbana or is it leading to the opposite? You remember what I talked about sometime, the opposite? When I told you, I told you already when I'm in Uganda, when I was in Uganda, how I used to get mangoes. You know that? You remember or not? You don't know how I used to get mangoes? Where is the stick? This is a stick. This is a mango. In Uganda, when I used to get mangoes, I used to hit like this, and then I don't get mangoes because I wasn't aiming higher. And then my siblings used to aim higher, and then because of gravity, they get the mangoes. For me, I didn't know what they're doing until they told me, please, whenever you want to get mangoes, don't hit below. Or don't even hit the mango itself. Aim higher so that the gravity comes, and then it hits the mango and you get mangoes. So me, every time I hit like this, it goes down, and I could not eat mangoes, so I could eat only bananas. So aim higher to get Nibbana, not bananas. Okay? Now, another distinction which is very important between what's skillful and unskillful. Once we get this distinction, then we can apply Hiri and Ottapa. This distinction is called, translated as priorities or governing principles. What are the governing principles? This is very, very important. I think I should read in the discourse. I think we still have some time. Let me see if I can read from the discourse itself, if possible. If not, I'll summarize the discourse. I'm going to read the discourse itself. These are called authorities, adipateya in Pali. Adipateya. So there are three principles or governing principles. One is called atta self, attadipateya, this means self. Another one is called loka dipateya. Loka is the world, right? The world with, sometimes the world has wise people and unwise people. And then there's another one which is called Dhamma Adipateya, means the governing principle of the Dhamma. If you don't know these principles, then it's going to be very difficult to distinguish between what's skillful and unskillful, and also to be very, very difficult to know when to apply Hiri and Ottapa. I think we still have some time. I can read directly from the words of the Buddha, because this is a Buddha day. And I wish you a Buddha-full day. So it bears really reading from the words of the Buddha himself, other than the words of this monk. Okay? So, bhikkhus, there are three authorities. What are the three? Oneself as one whose authority, the world as one whose authority, and the Dhamma as one whose authority. And what, bhikkhus, is oneself as one's authority? Here, having gone to the forest, and so on and so on, then he said, of course, this is what they're saying. This person is saying, having gone to the forest, to the root of a tree, to an empty heart, a bhikkhu reflects thus: I did not go forth from the household life into homeless for the sake of a robe, alms food, or lodging, or for the sake of becoming this or that, but rather with the thought, I'm immersed in birth, old age and death, in sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and anguish. I'm immersed in suffering, afflicted by suffering. Perhaps an ending of this entire mass of suffering can be discerned. As one who has gone forth from the household life to homeless, it would not be proper for me to seek for this kind of kamachanda. Right? This is you can see this is geared to monastic essential pleasures, but actually it can be used also for lay people. You are not going to indulge in unskillful states of mind, right? Similar to or worse than those who have that have discarded. He then reflects thus: energy will be aroused in me without slackening, mindfulness will be established without confusion, my body still will be tranquil without disturbance, my mind will be concentrated and one-pointed. Having taken himself as his authority, he abandons unwholesome. He develops wholesome, skillful. He abandons what is blameworthy and develops what's blameless. He maintains himself in purity. This is called oneself as authority, attadipateya. So in other words, you go to yourself. This is called inner voice in common language here. Inner voice, conscience. One's conscience. Actually, we all have that. Nobody is deprived of this unless you have a certain disorder. So we can distinguish between what's wholesome and unwholesome when somebody have this inner voice, conscious, and then if something really unwholesome when somebody has no conscience. Can we all agree on that? Because this is self-reference, and everybody has it. So we can now have Hiri and Ottapa after finding out for ourselves that actually this is not good for me. This is not good for others. So the second one is called lokadipateya. This is basically the wise people. The wise people can tell you that you are not doing good. And this is the world. Even the law in Singapore, they can tell you that. Isn't it? You have the law enforcement authorities which can tell you that what you are doing is not wholesome. Now, I'm going to read from the Buddha himself. And what bhikkhus is the world as one's authority? Here, having gone to a forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, a bhikkhu reflects thus: I did not go forth from the household life to homeless for the sake of a robe, but rather with the thought I'm immersed in birth, old age, and death. Perhaps an ending of this entire mass of suffering can be discerned. As one who has gone forth from the household life to homeless, I might think sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harming, but the abode of the world is vast. In the vast abode of the world, there are ascetics and brahmanis with psychic potence, and the divine eye who know the minds of others. They see things from the distance, but they are not themselves seen even when they are close. They know the minds of others with their own mind. They would know me thus. Look at this clansman. Though he has gone forth from home, from household life into homeless life, out of faith, he is astonished by bad and wholesome thoughts. These are deities, too, with psychic potence and the divine eye, who know the minds of others. They see even from a distance, but are not seen themselves, even when close. They too know the minds of others with their own mind. They too would know me thus. Look at this clansman, and so on. It repeats itself. He then reflects thus: energy will be aroused in me without slackening. Mindfulness will be established without confusion. My body will be tranquil without disturbance. My mind will be concentrated and one-pointed. Having taken the world as his authority, he abandons unwholesome and develops wholesome. He develops what's blameworthy. He abandons what is blameworthy and develops what's blameless. He maintains himself in purity. This is called the world as one's authority. Now, do we still have those people who can read people's mind? Psychic powers? And then you're worried, there's somebody who's looking? Maybe that's where the big eye came, somebody's watching you from above with a big eye. That used to terrify me, actually. I was terrified that there's a big eye watching me as a young man. But actually, when you look at the world here, forget about psychic powers. We know the wise people. People who have been keeping virtues for a long time. The wise ones. They will blame us when they see what we are doing. So you don't have to worry about, this Ajahn has psychic power, he's seeing me. No. This Bhante has been a monk for 30 years or 20 years, 50 years, is looking. No. Really, you know that once they know that this is how you are behaving, you don't have Hiri, you don't have Ottapa, they're definitely going to say, look at this guy, look at this person, the way they're behaving. So with this kind of lokadipateya, we actually use it our as a governing principles to guide us to arouse Hiri and Ottapa. So in other words, things which are going to lead to blameworthy, we actually abandon them out of Hiri and Ottapa. And also things which are praiseworthy, we actually cultivate them. Blameworthy, and we distinguish between what's blameworthy and praiseworthy. The wise are going to praise your virtues, and the same wise people, they are going to blame you for what you did. So now you can arouse what you call Hiri and Ottapa, knowing that the wise are going, the wise people are going to blame you for what you're doing. This is very, very important. Lastly, and that's what we're going to end with, is very, very important. This is called Dhammadipateya, taking Dhamma as the authority. And in many ways, this is the best yardstick to distinguish between what's skillful and unskillful, and then we can practice Hiri and Ottapa. I read this from the Buddha himself. And what bhikkhus is Dhamma as one's authority? Here, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty heart, a bhikkhu reflects thus: I did not go forth from from household life into homeless for the sake of a robe and so on, but rather with the thoughts, I must in birth, old age, and death, perhaps an ending of the entire mass of suffering can be discerned. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, to be personally experienced by the wise. There are fellow monks of mine who know and see. As one who has gone forth from household life into homeless in this well-expounded Dhamma and discipline, it would be improper for me to be lazy, to be heedless. He then reflects thus: energy will be aroused in me without slackening, mindfulness will be established without confusion, my body will be tranquil without disturbance, my mind will be concentrated and open and one-pointed. Having taken the Dhamma as his authority, he abandons the unwholesome and he develops the wholesome. He abandons what's blameworthy and he develops what's praiseworthy, in other words, blameless. He maintains himself in purity. This is called Dhamma as one of the authority. These bhikkhus are the three authorities. This is very, very good to end the Dhamma talk like this, because when the Buddha went to Parinibbana, what did he leave for us? Another Buddha? Another monk? No, I need to answer. Please help me. Today is Vesak Day. What are we celebrating? We're celebrating the birth, the enlightenment, and the passing of the Buddha. Here's a question. When the Buddha went into Mahaparinibbana, who did he leave behind for us to guide us? Dhamma Vinaya. We should use that as a standard to distinguish between what's wholesome and unwholesome, to arouse Hiri and Ottapa, so that we don't do things which is called adhamma. Because Dhamma Vinaya, Dhamma, which is doctrine and discipline, is our teacher, the best teacher. We can use that as a guidance. It doesn't mean you don't have spiritual friends. Spiritual friends, there are many monks who are spiritual friends who can guide us on the path to liberation. With that, I would like to end my talk. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to open this to Q and A. Say sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Right.
Thank you very much, Bhante, for the Dhamma sharing this morning. I would like to invite brothers and sisters who have questions. You may raise up your hand and then I will give the microphone to you. Anybody would like to ask questions to Bhante this morning? Okay, we have one.
Bhante, thank you for the enlightening talk. Can I just ask, what if a person has excessive moral shame or moral dread to the point where it's causing a lot of suffering to the person? How can we help such a person? Thank you.
If somebody has excessive,
are
you talking
to the point that...
give an example. Because for me, I don't think there is excessive moral shame and moral fear. There might be somebody who has a lot of fear and shame, that we should distinguish those two things.
Fair enough. So I think maybe the fear or the guilt or the self-reproach comes from a misguided perspective. So the person feels a lot of fear and shame.
Okay, definitely.
Yeah, about their actions. The actions may be very normal actions that have very little consequences on others, but it's perceived to be very important or very huge, such that the person feels very reproachful towards
yes.
So how can we help?
Thank you. Let me tell you, one thing we should distinguish from very beginning. There's a difference between remorse, guilt, and also fear, Hiri and Ottapa. There's a difference. You know, I hope you know. You know the difference between remorse, regret, and guilt. These are emotions that when somebody does something wrong, they actually turn anger towards themselves. Guilt is actually anger turned towards oneself. Having done something unskillful, you actually turn anger towards yourself as, this terrible, this kind of thing. But when somebody does this, of course, the first thing they cause is harm to themselves. When they have excessive guilt itself is harming you, right? Is destroying you. So now, you have to teach them how to deal with what you call lapses in misconduct. When we have lapses in our misconduct, we can follow Buddha's teaching on how to deal with those lapses. What did we see last time? We acknowledge. You teach that person how to deal with this kind of mental state which causes harm. First is, there are 4 stages. One is you acknowledge that these things, what I did, is unskillful. We cannot say this is a sin. We don't talk about this as a sin, you know. But we talk about as unskillful or, of course, you know, what's called unwholesome. Unwholesome or unskillful. Already you know the distinction. First, they have to acknowledge that they have done something wrong, and what we call unskillful. 2, they have to restrain from the future, not to do the same thing again. You teach them how to restrain from the future. Then, you also tell them how to amend, not to end, but to amend according to the Dhamma. In this case, they have to take the 5 precepts. They have to take the whatever the precept they broke, whatever wrong they did, they can actually amend according to Dhamma. They can actually go to the person and say, please forgive me. If I've done something wrong, knowingly, unknowingly, through body, speech, or mind, please forgive me. So you can actually go and ask for forgiveness and say sorry and all these kind of things. And also, you tell the people you confide in. You are like friends, spiritual friends, you know, so that you can feel this kind of letting go of the emotion, commotion of feeling hurt or wounded. And then you do good. So in other words, when somebody goes through this process, they're not going to have this guilt, being ridden with guilt and remorse, so that they cause harm to another, because they feel They have already harmed anyone already. So they are not going to overcome that, and they keep on harming others and all these things. Is that what you're asking?
Actually, it's more like the person sees her actions as blameworthy, but it's actually not blameworthy.
Who said it's not blameworthy? You? In fact, even if somebody says blameworthy, because many times the people come to me. Many people come to me, especially when I'm teaching 6 weeks retreat. People come and meditate, and they step on a cockroach. They step on a spider. These are the people who have been meditating for like 1 week, 2 weeks. They have been practicing mindfulness and all this. They come to me, Bhante, I feel terrible about it. I've killed, and I'm a Buddhist. Of course, they don't say that I'm going to go to hell, but they say, I feel terrible that I've killed. I've broken the precept. I said, did you actually intend to actually kill the cockroach? They said, no. I was doing walking meditation, and I stepped on it and killed it. Then I said, you have not broken the precept. You have killed, but you have not broken the precept. Because to break the precept, 5 conditions have to be present. This is not canonical, but we can still understand the whole thing, actually. It's within the Buddhist literature. We talk about 5 conditions to be present in order to killing to happen. Though it's post-canonical, but we can know exactly that is related to the canon when the Buddha talks about volition, the intention. You didn't intend to kill. Now, I tell them, 1, did you perceive it as a living being? Did you, actually, of course, the first condition, it has to be a living being. Second one, you perceive it as a living being. Another one, you intend to kill it. There's no intention. Then, of course, you apply energy. Because of your intention, you apply energy to kill it. And then the 5th condition is that it must be dead. Yes, the 5th condition is there. It's dead. But you didn't have intention to kill it. Right? If all those are together, then you have to retake the precept. The precept actually has been broken. It has been broken. So now, this is not a free license to keep on, to start closing your eyes and then stamp of all insects. No, it means that that action, whenever it has evolution, it has a potential to bring results. In other words, it has a potential, mark the word potential, to bring results. But it's always not going to bring the results. So now, when you are walking meditation, you have done, of course, something unskillful. Yeah? You have done something unskillful. It's not skillful to kill insects, even when intention is missing. Are we together on this? But if you really actually see an insect, I'm giving you another scenario. Wow, look at it, it's live. And then, wow, this is disturbing my meditation. And then you get your stick. And then I don't like you. You crush it. So you have applied your intention, perception is there, volition is there, effort is there, consciousness is there, it's dying, and all those 5 conditions are together. Then that action has what we call kamapata, the path to karma, vipaka, to bring the result based on ethical qualities of your mind, whether it had greed, whether it had greed, hatred, and delusion. That's why, even in normal law, penal code, premeditated murder is punished more than instant murder. Because you thought about it. That's the normal law. But actually, when you look at it, somebody killing and get remorse and all these things, you are actually hitting yourself and you're suffering. So I tell people, go and take the precept. Again, if you feel remorse, you have done something blameworthy, go and retake the precept. Determine not to do the same thing again. And then they can remove what you call their burden, that remorse, and all these things. I hope that helps. But help people who are thinking that they have done something blameworthy. Help them to figure out. Yeah? Help to figure out. Okay, one last question, I think.
One more last question, Bhante? Oh, okay. Any more? One last question for Bhante this morning? No? Okay.
Now there's a little bit of further reflection on this. There is two kinds of people. I found out reading this discourse. People who think that they have done something blameworthy and it's not blameworthy. And those who don't know, I think, whether they didn't. So, what do you do with those people, you yourself? When you ask the question, people, they really feel that they have done something blameworthy. What do you do? Suggest, because for me, that's what I would do. People think that they did something wrong. I will tell them, even when they have done something wrong. The Buddha talks about people who realize that they have done something wrong and they recognize that. So there is a way how to start doing what's skillful. It doesn't mean what you've done, it will not bring results. It will bring results, but actually start doing something skillful. He talks about the simile of salt. Who knows the simile of the salt? Whereby actually when you've been doing something and all these things, it talks about when you do something unskillful and then you change and you start to do something skillful. If you continue to do something skillful, it's like putting salt in a cup. Imagine this, a cup of water, and put salt. It will be salty, isn't it? But if you know that you've done something unskillful, try to do wholesome. And the Buddha talks about putting salt, the same amount of salt, in a lake. You cannot feel the taste of that. Do you? Same amount of salt in this cup and the same amount of salt in... Do you have lakes in Singapore? Don't you have lakes? I know Singapore River. Okay, Singapore River. Are you sure you don't have a lake? Okay, reservoir. Okay, you have a reservoir. Okay, you yourself tell me. You've been, actually, somebody that's unskillful, is guilty, feeling guilty because they have been doing a lot of bad things, and they are thinking that they've been doing a lot of bad things, and they start causing harm to others because they think that they will never be good anyway. So they start harming others, terrorizing others. So now, this person, if you tell them now, start a new chapter, keep the precept, come and meditate, right? It's like putting the same amount of salt in a reservoir in Singapore. It will not taste salty. It doesn't mean there's no salt. There is salt if you really go and to all the laboratory and measure. There will be salt, but it will be less taste, no impact, almost. So somebody who start doing good things, it doesn't mean their past action will not bring results. They may bring results in this lifetime or subsequent life or other kind of next life or subsequent life. So now, it's good that those people understand the concept of karma and the result of karma, the people we are talking about. This is very, very important. And this is a very good discourse you can tell them. And for me, I can see clearly. I know when I started the temple in Uganda, I know people who have done things which are not very good, but I didn't take them to the police because they were in a temple. You see, when you go to the temple and then take one book, you practice what you call bookkeeping. You know bookkeeping? Bookkeeping. And then I later on find out this person has been practicing bookkeeping, and after all in Uganda, there's only one place you can find Buddhist books. in Uganda. I said, maybe you would understand the Dhamma. Eh? When somebody who has taken a book from the library in Uganda Buddhist Center, and that book is missing, and I get to know that the person took it, I say, yes, keep on practicing bookkeeping, and now you'll understand the Dhamma. One day maybe you'll attain final liberation. But if that person get the book from the bookshop in Uganda, do you think, okay, the book maybe costs $20. What do you think? And this is his habit. It's called shoplifting, lifting the shop. So somebody who's lifting shops all the time and then is caught stealing a Dhamma book from a bookshop in Kampala, in Uganda. Do you think that person will get away with this? No, because he's doing unskillful. It's like the same putting salt in a small cup. That's where in fact, he's going to go to the prison because he's putting salt in a small cup. Small cup of water is the wholesome states of mind. They are so small. Right? But if this person comes to the Dhamma center, he's a meditator, and is cultivating a sila, ethical conduct, and now meditation, but he's slack or she's slack, and say, wow, I love that book, and takes it. And later on I find this person. I cannot take him to the prison because the impact, of course, he has stolen. But the result of having stolen is not going to bring a big impact because he's already doing good things. That's how I could compare it in the modern time, but the Buddha talked about salt. But for me, I can see it clearly. I'll never take somebody to the police because of keeping the book of a Dhamma. Is that clear? Sadhu,
sadhu, sadhu.
Okay,
sadhu.
That's the end of question and answer session.
Yeah. Bhante, would you like